One city, one operation, and Putin's entire plan to reach Kyiv just collapsed. Russia had a secret. Hidden inside the Kremlin's war room, military planners had spent months mapping the fastest route to Ukraine's capital. The answer was always the same: straight through the Chernihiv forests. A shadow army of 100,000 troops was silently being assembled across the Belarusian border. The logic was brutal in its simplicity: stabilize the eastern front, shift mass forces north, and drive a single, overwhelming spear toward Kyiv before Ukraine could react. Moscow believed it had already won on paper. All that remained was execution. But Ukraine wasn't reading from Moscow's script. Before we go further, if you follow this conflict closely and want analysis that goes deeper than the headlines, subscribe now. We track every shift on this front as it happens. Hit that button and you won't miss what comes next. While Russia quietly prepared its northern dream, Ukrainian military intelligence had already identified the pressure point that could unravel the entire Kremlin strategy. A mid-sized city on the Oskil River called Kupiansk. Kupiansk isn't famous. It doesn't carry the weight of Kharkiv or Mariupol in the headlines, but in military terms, it sat at the intersection of Russia's eastern supply lines and its ambitions further north. Holding it meant Russia could sustain pressure across two fronts simultaneously. Losing it meant the eastern front would fracture at exactly the moment Moscow needed it stable. Ukraine understood this, and in May 2026, rather than waiting for the northern blow to land, Kyiv chose to strike the foundation beneath it first. The operation was methodical and months in the making. The 13th National Guard Brigade Karta moved into Kupiansk like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. These were not troops improvising under fire. They were executing a plan that Ukrainian commanders had been quietly refining since the hard winter fighting of January and February 2026. That earlier phase had already paralyzed Russian morale. Ukrainian forces had raised their flag over the city council building in January. By February, Joint Forces spokesperson Viktor Trekhub confirmed that reliable control had been established across key districts. May was always meant to be the finish. Mechanized units of the 10th Army Corps sealed the eastern bank of the Oskil River, cutting off every Russian escape route out of the city. No reinforcements in, no retreat out. The vice was closing. Ukraine's now legendary Achilles FP-5 drone unit was given a simple order: eliminate whatever was left. Russian forces had dug deep. Literally, they had spent weeks converting apartment buildings, factory floors, and underground passages into fortified bunkers. Some positions were layered behind thick concrete and connected through tunnel networks designed to allow small groups to shift positions without ever surfacing. From the outside, these weren't military facilities. They looked like a city still pretending to be inhabited. But Ukraine had done its homework. After months of drone reconnaissance and intelligence fusion, Ukrainian forces launched a coordinated, multi-directional assault that didn't give Russia a single safe direction to fall back toward. Artillery sealed the approaches. Drones eliminated any attempt to reposition. Ground units tightened the perimeter from every compass point simultaneously. Within days, Russian command structure inside Kupiansk had stopped functioning entirely. Units lost contact with their officers. Officers lost contact with the chain above them. The organized military machine became a collection of isolated, frightened men in basements waiting for orders that would never come. Then came the moment that sealed it. Ukrainian intelligence pinpointed the final Russian holdout: the Kupiansk Central District Hospital. Not a military base, not a command post, a hospital. Approximately 20 Russian soldiers had taken shelter in the basement. Their supply lines severed, their communication equipment failing, surrounded on all sides. The building's thick concrete walls and underground access tunnels had made it defensible in a way that few civilian structures could match. It was Russia's last card in the city. Ukraine played its own hand carefully. Reconnaissance drones swept the building first, mapping the internal layout, identifying heat signatures, confirming the number of occupants and their positions. Only after that intelligence was processed did Ukrainian commanders authorize the strike. Precision-guided munitions and heavy drone strikes hit the structure with surgical accuracy. The goal was not to destroy a hospital. The goal was to eliminate a military position that had occupied one. When the smoke cleared, no organized Russian military presence remained anywhere in the Kupiansk city center. Not a cell, Not a squad, not a single coordinated unit capable of holding ground. But Russia wasn't finished. It just got more desperate. Unable to push armored convoys or organized infantry through Ukrainian lines, Russian command shifted to what military analysts began calling micro-infiltration. One soldier at a time, two at most, slipping through minefields in the dark, moving along dense forest paths that Ukrainian artillery couldn't efficiently target, crossing the Oskol River in small civilian boats, and in one of the stranger tactical decisions of the entire war, attempting to crawl through the large industrial pipes that ran beneath the river, hoping to emerge behind Ukrainian positions undetected. Think about what that image represents. The Russian army, one of the largest and most heavily equipped military forces on Earth, reduced to sending individual soldiers through drainage pipes beneath a Ukrainian river, hoping nobody was watching. Somebody was watching. Ukraine's drone units had already anticipated this shift. Operators equipped with thermal imaging FPV drones were positioned at every known crossing point, every pipe entrance, every forest trail that reconnaissance had flagged as a potential infiltration route. In the darkness, heat signatures glowed. Russian soldiers hiding in tree hollows or pressing themselves flat inside concrete pipes showed up clearly on thermal displays as bright as lanterns. Each detection ended the same way: a kamikaze dive, a precise strike, a problem eliminated in seconds. The gates to Kupiansk were closed and locked. Then came Moscow's response, and it was embarrassing. On May 16, 2026, Chief of the Russian General Staff Valery Gerasimov stood before Western Group commanders and made sweeping public claims about Russian positions and progress in Kupiansk. The claims were detailed. They were confident. They were almost entirely false. Within hours, those claims were shredded, not by Ukrainian government statements, not by NATO briefings, but by raw drone footage uploaded directly from the battlefield. Independent military analysts cross-referenced the footage with satellite imagery and positional data. The conclusion was unanimous. Gerasimov had either been severely misled by his own subordinates, or he had chosen to publicly lie to his own commanders. Either answer was damaging. Moscow's propaganda move became, in the words of one analyst, a gift to Kyiv. It confirmed that the Russian military's internal reporting had broken down, that the command structure was receiving distorted battlefield assessments or generating them deliberately. In a war where information and morale are as critical as ammunition, this was not a minor embarrassment. It was a structural warning sign. But here is where the story expands, because while Ukraine was winning in Kupiansk, a far larger danger was taking shape in the north. On May 20th, 2026, President Zelensky convened an emergency intelligence briefing with senior military and intelligence leadership. The content of that meeting, confirmed through subsequent public statements, was alarming. Satellite imagery showed extensive logistical movement along the Belarusian border. Intercepted communications confirmed what Ukrainian analysts had long suspected. Russia had finalized not one, but 5 separate operational scenarios for pushing through Chernihiv toward Kyiv. The 100,000-troop northern force was not a rumor. It was a real, active mobilization, and Belarus was being drawn deeper in. On May 18th, 2 days before the Kyiv intelligence meeting, Russia and Belarus had launched joint nuclear exercises. The message was deliberate and layered. Ukraine should fear escalation, NATO should hesitate to respond, and Minsk should feel locked into Moscow's orbit. Secret negotiations in Belarusian government buildings were, according to Ukrainian intelligence sources, being monitored in real time. General Oleksandr Syrsky, chief of Ukraine's general staff, did not hedge when he addressed the situation. His assessment was direct. The northern threat was extremely realistic. Ukraine needed to treat it as imminent. So the question became, how does a country already fighting on a 1,000-kilometer eastern front simultaneously defend against a potential 100,000-strong invasion from the north? The answer was sitting right in front of them. It was standing in the rubble of Kupiansk, catching its breath. The elite units that had just spent months clearing that city, the soldiers who had fought building to building, basement to basement, who had coordinated artillery and drone strikes in real time under live fire, who had figured out how to flush Russian soldiers out of pipes and tunnels using thermal cameras and kamikaze drones. Those soldiers were now available. Their mission in Kupiansk was complete, and Ukraine's general staff immediately began rotating them north. The 13th National Guard Brigade, KARTA, the primary striking force of the entire Kupiansk operation, was reassigned to support northern defensive operations. Elements of the mechanized brigades from the 10th Army Corps that had held the Oskil River line followed. Other experienced units from the city's cleanup phase were redirected along the same axis. Military planners estimated that with these reinforcements, Ukrainian troop strength in the Chernihiv region could reach 50,000 to 55,000 soldiers. Not a thin defensive line, a substantial, experienced, battle-hardened force positioned along the most dangerous approach corridor in the country. And behind those soldiers stood something that Russia had not faced in 2022, a defense network built specifically to stop what was coming. Stretching 300 kilometers from the Kyiv reservoir to Sumy, Ukraine had constructed a layered fortification system that military engineers described as the most sophisticated defensive line built in Europe since World War II. Over 2,130 concrete bunkers, reinforced with special steel internal structures capable of absorbing prolonged artillery, connected by underground tunnel networks, more than 3,000 kilometers of anti-tank ditches dug deep enough to stop any main battle tank currently in Russian inventory. Thousands of dragon's teeth concrete pyramid barriers positioned directly behind those ditches, designed to slow armored vehicles to a crawl and funnel them into prepared kill zones. Concrete pillboxes built largely below ground level to reduce their exposure to direct fire. Hidden ammunition depots distributed between trench lines to prevent a single strike from gutting a defensive sector's supply, and an electronic warfare umbrella extending 100 kilometers deep from the border, capable of degrading Russian drone reconnaissance and disrupting communications before any attacking force could even see what it was walking into. Military doctrine is unambiguous on this point. To breach a layered, fortified defensive line of this type, an attacking force needs 3 to 5 times the troop strength of the defenders, and it needs to sustain that advantage across the full width and depth of the assault while maintaining unbroken logistics. Russia's 100,000 troop force, after absorbing the losses from Kupiansk, almost certainly cannot meet that threshold, and it would be attempting to do so against 50,000 to 55,000 of the most experienced soldiers Ukraine has fielded in this war. Step back and look at the full picture, because the losses Russia absorbed in Kupiansk were not just tactical, they were strategic. The 6th Combined Arms Army of the Leningrad Military District and the 1st Guards Tank Army of the Moscow Military District, two of Russia's most prestigious and best-equipped formations, were committed to this front. They brought T-90M tanks. They brought trained contract soldiers. They brought Russia's most trusted motorized rifle brigades. The 27th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade suffered its heaviest losses of the entire war. The 121st and 122nd Regiments of the 68th Motorized Rifle Division were functionally neutralized when their logistics bridges over the Oskil were destroyed by coordinated Ukrainian artillery. The 153rd Tank Regiment of the 47th Tank Division, one of Russia's most powerful armored formations, lost the majority of its vehicles to FP-5 drone strikes. These were the reserves Moscow had earmarked for the northern offensive. The manpower it knew needs to replace those losses is being pulled directly from the pool of troops it planned to send through Chernihiv. One cleanup operation didn't just liberate a city, it dismantled the foundation of Russia's next major offensive. The Kremlin still has options. Russia still has troops, artillery, and political will. The war is not over. Anyone telling you otherwise is not paying close enough attention. But the calculation has fundamentally shifted. Kyiv has seized the initiative on 2 fronts simultaneously. It has deepened its northern defenses with combat-proven units. It has exposed the fragility of Russian internal reporting. It has forced Moscow to consume its best formations defending a city it was already losing. And it has done all of this while the Kremlin was still announcing the offensive it believed was inevitable. Putin's plan to reach Kyiv depended on 3 things: speed, surprise, and fresh reserves. He has none of the 3 now. The ambush Russia set in the north was answered by the trap Ukraine laid in the east. The cleansing of one city may have just saved a capital. Now the question is yours. Does Russia still have the military capacity and the political nerve to launch a serious northern offensive after what happened in Kupiansk? Or has this operation already decided the strategic outcome of the next phase of this war? Drop your take in the comments. We read every single one, and if you're not subscribed yet, do it now.